Cloth diapers are one of my favorite ways to make burp cloths, and they're just so much cuter when you decorate them with some fabric. This is a great and quick project for baby showers, to sew and sell, or just for your own baby. So let me show you the two ways and then let me know in the comments which one you prefer. If you want to have everything nice and squared off and you want to have a nice rectangle, we're going to sew one piece of fabric on one side of the diaper. So that is option one. Option two, which is a little bit quicker, uses a little bit less fabric, is to just put a strip of fabric down the center where the diaper is a little bit thicker anyway. Now, let me show you how to do both of these options. So here's what you need. You can buy these Gerber fabric diapers in a 10-pack. They are approximately 20 inches by 14, but they're not perfectly squared off because they're meant to be a baby's diaper, so it's not super important. So I have the sides lined up, and you can really see how wavy this is at the bottom. It's honestly not a huge deal when you're using it as a burp cloth. Nobody's going to be checking your lines. It is really personal preference. So this is the way I have shown how to do it before. It takes less fabric than doing this, but when I put one on top of the other, it really highlights just how crooked the bottom one is. So I'm going to take my fabric that's a little bit bigger than the diaper and put it face up, and then we're going to put the diaper on top of it. That really shows you just how crooked everything is, doesn't it? And then you're going to pick one edge to use as your straight edge. So I'm just going to use one of these sides because that looks pretty straight, and we're just going to straighten everything to that line. So I'm going to line that up with the straight edge of my fabric, and then I'm going to put that on my cutting mat lined up with an inch line on the mat. And then I'm just going to cut this into a rectangle, and I'm just going to pick a line and make sure we're completely squaring that off. And then you can either turn your entire mat, or I'm just going to turn the project. So when you do this, you're going to have different size burp cloths as well, because I'm not doing it to a specific measurement. I'm just squaring off the diaper that I have. If you want them all to be exactly the same, then just figure out what a good size is. Trimming just a little bit off the width and a bit off the ends, because that is where the jiggle really comes into play. And then for this one, I just clip all the way around. And you're going to need to leave a few inches open. I had tried up here, it was just a little bit skinny. This is too hard to turn under and touch, so you don't want to do the fat part. So I'm going to leave this part open. So I'm going to put two clips up here so that I remember to stop when I get to that spot. And I'm going to start about here. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, leaving that space open for turning. We have sewn all the way around and we have an opening. I'm going to turn this over so you can see the edges better. One thing I love about this cutting mat is it's dark on one side. So when you're working with lighter fabrics, you can see. You want to make sure there's not a bunch of white sticking off this edge, because when we iron it, we don't want that to show. So we look good to go. So now I'm going to clip the corners, making sure not to clip the thread. And I like to do 2 cuts because then I can go deeper and have less fabric that has to fold into that corner. And then I'm going to get a better point when I turn that right side out. All right, find my opening. Or when I'm making things for baby, I always pre-wash my fabric, because this cotton fabric, if it isn't pre-washed, is probably going to shrink a little bit in the laundry, whereas the diaper isn't. So then it's going to feel tight and it's not going to be as nice once it is washed. And that pretty much goes for anything for babies. Burp cloths, bibs, quilts, everything is going through the wash quite a bit. So now all we need to do is just get everything pushed out nicely. We don't want the seams folded over, we want that out, but we want to make sure we're only seeing the fabric on the top, and we don't want the diaper coming through, so you don't have little pieces of white on your shoulder when you have this on your shoulder burping baby. And I usually do all of the sides, and then I do the opening last. You could also personalize these. You could machine embroider a name on it. You could applique an initial. That would make it even more personal as a gift, or allow you to charge a little bit more if you are sewing and selling. Personalization always gets you a little bit more money because yeah, it takes a little bit more time, but it also is something that everybody can't just, you don't walk into Target and buy personalized diaper bibs. So now we just have to fold this under and get that so that it is straight. So you'll see this looks a little bit better because it's just going to be full fabric on the front, but it does take longer because you have to turn it right side out, you have to press it, and now we're going to have to sew. We're going to sew all the way around the edges, and then I also recommend that you sew kind of down here. Don't follow these lines because they're not straight, but sew two down the middle so that the fabric doesn't get all wrinkled and move around too much when you wash it. And I sew about 1/8 of an inch from the edge because we want to make sure we're catching that diaper and the fabric and nothing is going to pop out and fray. And I'm going to use the green on the top and the white on the bottom. I'm going to show you how to do this one with the strip. So what you're going to need is just an old file folder like this. So what we're going to make is a template. And it needs to be longer than the diaper. So this is actually 2 parts of the file folder together so that I can have it like this. I just keep this on hand. So if somebody's having a new baby or I want to whip some of these out, I already have this ready to go. So to make this, you can use scissors and just draw a line as well if you don't have a paper cutter. But I'm going to cut 5 1/4 inch strip. And then a second piece, 5 1/4 inches. And then I'm just going to cut off the top curved part of the file folder because we do not need it to be curved. Okay, so what I did was I took this one where it has the 3 little lines where you can like fold it to make it fat. And I cut the excess off past the fold and past those 3 little lines. Because that's going to give a little flap and a nice little bend. So I'm going to take a glue stick. I'm going to put the glue on the back side of that flap. I'm going to put this underneath here to make sure I do not get glue on my cutting mat. And then I'm just going to line up that fold with the edge, press that down. So now I have a second template that is 5 1/4 inches wide and longer than a diaper. Now, diapers obviously come out pretty wrinkled. Iron your diaper before you get started. So this one is ironed. You'll also notice like the way that they stitch these diapers, it's not always consistent with the padding, but we're going to be covering that section up. I'm going to line my fabric up with a line on my cutting mat. Then I'm going to put my template 1/2 inch from the edge of the fabric. And then I'm going to cut 1/2 inch to the other side. I do it this way because then I'm just measuring off the side of the template and not having to measure. But if you want to measure, it's basically 6 1/4 inches wide by however long, but you want it to be longer than your diaper. So at least 21 inches long. Now, before we iron these edges, I'm going to trim this because it's just way too long. I'm just going to take my ruler. I'm going to make sure I'm cutting at least 1/2 inch off of the edge of the diaper. Now you're going to put your strip face down on your ironing surface, and you're going to center your template. So this is kind of using a file folder like a hot ruler. We're going to iron right on it, and I've used this many times. It will change a little bit of color when you iron as the paper gets heated, but then it goes right back to file folder color when you're done. You're going to do that on both sides. And I didn't keep it quite centered, but that's okay because this is going to be on the diaper side. You just want to make sure there's enough that when you stitch it down, it's not going to come up. If you wanted to do any kind of personalization, like applique child's initial on it, you would do that now before you sew it onto your diaper. We're just going to keep rolling. So now I'm going to put my diaper down because now we need to do the short edges so that they match the diaper. So I'm going to set it up so it's pretty much centered. And because the shape is inconsistent, I do it while it's on the diaper and I just try and fold it to the shape of the diaper. You could fold it over, but I really don't like to have the edge of the fabric on the back side. So I like to have it folded like this. I also like to use a combination of clips and pins. You can use all pins if you prefer. And I'm going to do the same thing to this end, folding it under to match whatever curve or wiggle that this diaper has. All right, so to finish this, all we need to do is sew all the way around the edges to adhere this fabric. And I'm going to be using a white bobbin thread and a green top thread to match this. Be super cute, super easy. If you're sewing and selling, this is a great way to go because it is going to take you the least amount of time. If you're gifting these, I often give them in sets of 3 or 5, never just one, because if you've had a baby in your life, you know you go through burp cloths and you don't want to have to do the laundry every 2 seconds. Now, because I'm not starting off of the edge, I'm going to pull up the bobbin thread so we don't have a bird's nest knot on the back of the diaper. So I put my foot down, I hold the top thread, put my needle down, pull it back up, and give that a little tug. And you can see the bobbin thread came through. And then I always keep tweezers so I can pull that out, put them both under the presser foot, go forward and back a few stitches to knot. Now, I also want to show you how this is working with this pin at an angle. See how close I got? The tip of the pin is up here, but because I put this at an angle, I could sew really close and still keep the pin in there, holding everything in place. So if I had pinned straight, the pin would be right there, and I would have to stop maybe 1 stitch forward from where I am, but because I did it at an angle, I'm going to be able to sew all the way to here before I have to remove that pin. And when I get down to the edge, we want to make sure everything stays folded under and in place. So I'm going to hold it with my scissors. This one is all done. So it is a quicker way to make a gift. You would then just fold the thinner white flaps, fold it like that, maybe like that, make a little stack, put a bow around it, and you would be good to go. If you're sewing and selling, this would sell for a little bit less, I would assume, because it's not quite as fancy and it's not going to take you as long to make, and you're using about half as much fabric. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer.